DC Comics just this week announced they've got a mystery project, a mystery event that's going to be the biggest thing happening in 2024 for the publisher. And I feel like this is kind of all connecting with these rumors that I've been hearing for several years now. At first, it sounded like it might happen, but it might be a pipe dream, that it wouldn't happen because the main creator ended up leaving DC Comics. And now it sounds like it's basically an inevitability that DC Comics are going to do like an Ultimate style universe. Obviously, it's not going to be called Ultimate DC or whatever, but that's the way it's kind of been explained to me over the last several years. And I do believe the return of Scott Snyder to lead this Ultimate style universe is what DC Comics are hitting at with this announcement that came out this week. For those of you that are unaware, there's an issue currently with the placeholder named DC's Major Event of 2024 Free Comic Book Day Special Edition. If that's not enough to draw attention, the official description of the issue probably is, well, the prelude to the biggest DC Comics event of 2024 will drop on May 4 at all participating retailers. It's a story 30 years in the making, and in this special free comic book tale, an original story leading into a new series launching summer 2024, the final domino to fall, the final brick in the wall in an epic scheme comes tumbling down, and the DC universe will never be the same. More details coming soon. No spoilers here. Now, that is very limited information and certainly not very specific, but I do believe what it is referring to is this Ultimate style universe that I've been talking about just here and there on the channel, mostly in streams, that Scott Snyder has been talking about, or behind the scenes at least, trying to get off the ground for about 5 years now. And I do believe I know the other two big creators behind this. I believe it's going to be, at least the way it's been explained to me, Scott Snyder, Jason Aaron, as well as Al Ewing, kind of as the main creative figureheads for this DC Ultimate style universe. Obviously, everyone knows the Ultimate universe from Marvel Comics, where you have characters that are very familiar, looks that are familiar, but are completely different because it's a different universe. In that universe, obviously, Peter Parker dies eventually. Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man. You don't have the Avengers, you have the Ultimates, and you have just kind of little different iterations of the heroes and villains and stuff like that. And I believe Scott Snyder is coming back to head up like their Ultimate style Batman series. Jason Aaron would then be on the Ultimate style like Superman series, and then Al Ewing would lead up the Ultimate style Wonder Woman series, I believe. At least that's what it's been kind of explained to me, and I do believe that's exactly what that little placeholder is the kickoff to this Ultimate kind of universe the DC Comics are going to be doing. Now, DC Comics do have a lot of things out there that are kind of Ultimate style anyway with their DC Elseworlds. You know, Marvel has some stuff like that, you know, with their what-if stories, but they're normally one-shots and stuff like that. But DC does have an enormous line of Elseworlds comics that kind of filled that void, and they're even relaunching Elseworlds in 2024 as well. But I do believe this will be its own shared, smaller, contained comic book universe that will be an alternative to the mainline DC Comics continuity, which I do think a lot of people would like, because DC's current mainline continuity, while it's trending a little bit up, is not exactly fabulous right now. And we haven't gotten a whole lot of really great event comics for several years now. Although Beast World, if you don't read the tie-ins, including the stuff in Titans, is actually pretty good. But this would be an alternative shared continuity universe with three pretty high-profile comic book creators in Scott Snyder, Al Ewing, and Jason Aaron. Obviously, the DC Comics fans, Scott Snyder is going to be the big one. You know, he did Court of Owls. He did the last successful run on Justice League. His Batman run was very, very successful. He did Dark Knight's Metal, Dark Knight's Death Metal, several events that were all very successful. His Swamp Thing stuff, absolutely fantastic if you've never read that. So Scott Snyder is a known quantity at DC Comics, although he did say he was never going to write Batman again. Once he did Last Night on Earth, I believe that was supposed to be the final chapter. I guess this would be a way around that to put him on what is an alternative to Batman. And I imagine it'll just be a different version of Bruce Wayne in a different multiverse or whatever. Jason Aaron has come aboard as of late, working on Batman Offworld, also doing a Superman story in Action Comics. Batman Offworld has been fantastic. Action Comics was perfectly fine on the first issue, although Al Ewing hasn't worked at DC much, if at all, really. A story 30 years in the making is a fascinating tease to drop. Back in 1994, the biggest DC events were the end of the Reign of Supermen storyline, Hal Jordan's fall from grace in Emerald Twilight, and 0 Hour Crisis in Time, which saw the DC universe rebooted from scratch for a second time in a decade. Could this new event be spinning out of one of those fan favorite comics, or could it be something far less obvious? 1994 was also a year that saw the launch of the acclaimed Starman series from James Robinson and Tony Harris, for example, as well as the debut of Forgot Justice League member Triumph. Could a more obscure comic hold the key? I do not have all the details about what this is going to be. I have very limited information about what this DC Ultimate Universe is going to be. But the thing right there that they mentioned that makes all the sense in the world, saying that it's been 30 years in the making, is 0 Hour Crisis in Time, which basically saw the end result of Hal Jordan go insane. I think, is it Hawk becomes the extant or extract or something like that, tries to change all the timelines in history. Obviously, it ended up being Parallax in the form of Hal Jordan behind all of that, and they ended up saving the day. But it did reboot all the characters, and I believe you got 0 issues for most of the DC characters and teams or whatever, with like tweaked origins and stuff like that to reboot the continuity and get things back in order. And it would make sense if you were trying to make your own new multiverse that was a spinoff of something that perhaps an Amanda Waller was doing, because we are going to be in DC Comics' new Trinity of Evil storyline where we have Queen Brainiac, Amanda Waller, as well as Batman and Zur-En-Arrh. This doesn't sound like a Zur-En-Arrh thing. It certainly doesn't sound like a Queen Brainiac thing, but it does sound like something Waller would be in there. They did mention Wall in the solicitation itself, and Amanda Waller is referred to as the Wall numerous times over the history of DC Comics, so it kind of makes sense. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do that, but I do believe Waller's going to do something. Right now, she started Beast World, and it sounds like she's going to be doing something even worse. She's basically all over the place in Green Arrow, also in the Tom King Wonder Woman run and stuff like that. We do know Josh Williamson is a big fan and kind of a mentee of Scott Snyder himself. They're very, very close. It would kind of make sense that maybe Waller and whatever she's doing with Green Arrow right now ends up more leading to this, I guess. And we did recently see Green Arrow basically get bamped out of time and be saved and come back and see different multiverses and stuff like that. So I do not know how exactly it's going to happen, but if I were to guess based on the information that we have from the solicitation and kind of the history of DC Comics, if you need to go back 30 years, 0 Hour Crisis in Time makes the most sense to me. And I'm not the only person that's actually been public about hearing these rumors. In fact, an A-list comic book creator from the 90s that we all know and love, Rob Liefeld, recently talked about it in his most recent Robservations podcast, as well as talking about Last Blood. He talked about upcoming plans at Marvel and DC Comics in 2024. DC is absolutely doing an ultimate reboot. I know people at the helm, the people in charge, a lot of people called, a lot of people solicited to be a part of it. I have mostly spoken to people who didn't choose to go on board. I don't think it's as far along as the Marvel stuff. And the Marvel stuff he's talking about is the X-Men relaunch that's happening in like June or July or whatever. So there you have Rob Liefeld also talking about this DC Comics Ultimate Universe reboot, relaunch, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's going to reboot the entire universe, or at least it shouldn't. I think it's going to be its own little subset of DC Comics and shared continuity. Although, you know, plans change. It is Scott Snyder. He's still a big deal. DC Comics would love to have him back as like one of their mainline writers, because they do need some star power. Jason Aaron's on board. From what I'm told, Al Ewing's on board. So maybe they are going to go a little bit wider with that. I do not know for certain that what they're talking about for the big event in 2024 with Free Comic Book Day, this lead into it that's going to lead into a series in 2024, is this ultimate relaunch, but it does sound like it. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense with 0 Hour Crisis in Time would be very much a blueprint for what you're going to have to do with an Ultimate Universe reboot. You're going to have to find a place and time for these heroes. You're going to have to start there and then start filling in the blanks as far as what their origins are, where they've been, what they've done so far, how they know each other, and then kind of move forward from there. I don't think they're going to go back all the way to the beginning. I think they're going to find a time and place that makes sense for all the characters and all the creators, to where they can probably jump in and do some of the more high profile, high visibility DC Comics stories over the years, kind of like what they did with the Ultimate Universe at Marvel originally, where basically they played out like the greatest hits of Marvel Comics for like 8 years before it kind of fizzled out or whatever. Should be very interesting. I can't wait to find out what this is, but I do have a very strong feeling that what they're talking about there is this ultimate reboot that I've been talking about, or at least hinting at on the channel for the last 6 months or so, because it's definitely picked up steam and it definitely seems like it's going to happen. If you want more information on this and other stuff, and you want to ask me questions, you need to go over to the Patreon. If you haven't checked that out, we've got 3 tiers for that one. If you want to listen to the channel like a podcast, you can get all the audio files. If you like a more comic book reviews, we've got a podcast for that. If you like Q&A with Doc, we got a podcast for that. If you like pop culture discussions and news, we got a podcast for that. If you like the solicitations, I break those all down. Lots of fun stuff going over on the Patreon, and we just started the Comics Guild, doing a read-through from Miller World beginning to end all the way to Big Game, and also doing a read-through from Warren Ellis's Planetary. Definitely check that out. There's a link in the video description if you want some more comic book coverage with longer format over on the Patreon.